Thank you for staying with us. Now, the President of the Senate, Godswill AKPABIO, has announced the names of 8 lawmakers who made it to the 10th Senate Majority and Minority list. This announcement was made during a House plenary where 4 majority leaders and 4 minority leaders emerged in the House. In the House of Representatives, the Speaker, Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, also unveiled the principal officers of the Green Chamber. What should Nigerians be expecting from these newly appointed officers? Joining us via Zoom from Abuja is a strategist, policy analyst, the Group CEO, Global Investment and Trade Company, Baba Yusuf. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you for having me, Veronica and Kemi. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, let me begin with your impressions of this principal officers that emerged yesterday. Does it reflect the principle of equity, fairness, and justice, like some persons have been saying?
Yeah, obviously it does. First of all, what are the indicators to show us that we see the spread in terms of the geographical locations of the principal officers? We see the National Assembly trying to achieve a balance with regards to trying to ensure there's almost equal representation from the geopolitical groups, which is a key issue, trying to address the polarization that is facing us in this country. Secondly, it is almost 24 hours since the announcement of the principal officer. We did not see any major hue and cry from the opposition parties or even within the ruling party in terms of people saying they are not happy with the outcome. Even though it's a totally National Assembly affair, I think if the citizens of Nigeria could see that the 10th Assembly is beginning to, conduct itself in a way and manner that we expect a National Assembly to conduct itself. If they cannot be able to put their house in order at the first instance, how can they come together to make laws for the unity and progress of Nigeria? So to my mind, so far, so good. The outcomes are good. Let them get to the business of legislation moving forward.
Yes, it may not have been as rancor-free as some expected it would be because of the tension leading up to their emergence. But we saw the National Working Committee, as well as the leader of the party, talking about Abdullahi Adamu, saying that this is more like a rumor and that they were not consulted, so to speak, for a conclusion on the list before the 10th Assembly went ahead, talking about the Senate now, as well as the Speaker of the House of Rep went ahead to make this pronouncement, even though it is being reported that the presidency and the progressive governors are in support.
First of all, with all due respect to the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, he is a former governor in this country. He is a former distinguished senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He knows the rules of the National Assembly, whether it is the Senate or the House of Reps. It is a totally National Assembly affair. Indeed, the party would come in and provide some kind of guidance or intervention, but it does not mean that the party can overrule the outcome of the proceedings of a National Assembly in sitting. All right, and let us also not forget that the outcome also goes beyond the All Progressives Congress principal officers. We have a combination of opposition parties. We have the emergence of principal officers representing the opposition parties, what you call the minority, which although we call them the greater majority in the 10th Assembly. So I think the national chairman is just saying his mind as the chairman of the party or as a citizen of the country. I also want to believe that it is not the total position of the political party. Indeed, we have critical stakeholders within the party, and in the characteristic of the party or any other political party, if there's a major division, even though we have to give it to him, he's the national chairman of the party, we would have seen some power blocks crying out to say they are not also comfortable with this position. The total position or the general position and disposition of the critical stakeholders from the presidency to the party hierarchy, we don't see any, body raising this kind of voice that the national chairman is raising. which is not new to us with regards to Senator Abdullahi Adamu. He is always coming out with this position sometimes, and at the end of the day, we'll wait and see what plays out. But I think the National Assembly will move on. They didn't do anything unconstitutional. They didn't do anything illegal. So I think we are going to proceed moving forward.
And what do you think the future will be like, or even the coming days will be like, in how the lawmakers, sustain this departure as we see play out? Because regularly there is a letter that is read, in the House, in the open, by the ruling party, kind of announcing the names of principal officers, at least from the ruling party, before the minority, the announcements from the minority parties. But we didn't see that happen yesterday when Senator AKPABIO, the Senate president, read out the names on basis of consensus, he says. How far do you think this will go, especially in how we feel, or how you feel the lawmakers should conduct their businesses?
In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with this, because to my mind, it's a function of methodology. So long as what is done is not illegal or unconstitutional, the approach could be varied or changed. If the political party does not send a letter or whatever, so long as the rules of the National Assembly are complied with, and of course, importantly, there is no anything that is an aberration to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I don't see anything wrong with the National Assembly proceeding. What we should note is that we want to see progress in the political evolution of Nigeria. We don't want to be stuck in the past. Just because what is happening in the past is acceptable does not mean it is best practice, does not mean it should be what it is. So to my mind, we have seen consultation, we have seen consensus, quote unquote. What is consensus? Consensus doesn't mean when 100 people sit down to have a conversation, 100 people must agree, to that extent. Consensus means majority of the people are able to agree and come out a position that reflects majority, greater majority in whatever the case may be. That is what should be the focus. And I think that being said, we did not see the critical stakeholders, the National Assembly members, whether the red chamber or green chamber, coming out to say, no, this is not acceptable. Of course, we have some very faint voices of people that are saying they are not comfortable with it, but you hear the voices, fizzling away in the background. If anybody has any axe to grind, it is the members of the National Assembly. With due respect to the citizens of Nigeria, this is wholly a National Assembly affair. If they have come out this way and we don't see that rancorous situation with regards to the emergence of the principal officers, I think we should now tax them with the mandate we have given them as constituents or as citizens of this country, and let's move on to the business of building a nation.
Right, before we go to the task or the mandate we're to give them, what does this issue of having a rancor-free process say of our evolving democracy? Because a lot of persons have talked about the diverse nature of this 10th Assembly. What does it say to the matter of us evolving as a democracy?
Well, that is where I'm very interested to have a conversation I'm going to be focused on. Because for the first time in the history of Nigeria, we have the highest number of opposition parties represented at the National Assembly, the 10th Assembly. We have about 181 members representing the opposition, while we have 171 members, Senate and House, representing the All Progressives Congress. We have 7 opposition parties represented. So what remains to be seen is how, the power of consultation, fantastic, constructive engagement, fantastic, but we will see the value the opposition parties are going to bring in this conversation. We don't expect the rancor. We are saying people are talking about rancor. I'm talking about creative tension. I want to see what I call creative tension with a view to building our nation. I don't expect to see a transactional National Assembly with a view to saying we just sit down and agree and then move on. If the opposition parties are what they are, I'm not expecting them to be a clog in the wheel of progress of Nigeria and in the parliament. But I expect them to provide that counterbalance, provide what I call the cruise control for the National Assembly. And that is what we'll wait and see, whether we really have an opposition or we have people that emerge as members using political parties as what I call special purpose vehicles.
And how does this also, strike you, looking at the fallout of the elections and, what we see now in terms of the diversity of political parties, the fact also that, many lawmakers who had for long been identified with the House of Reps or the Senate, didn't return back. How does that strike you? What we see play out now, how does it strike you when you see or when you expect, how their style of lawmaking will be?
Well, first of all, if the members of National Assembly are serious and they intend to respect the sensitivities and the sensibilities of Nigerians, what happened to the night assembly should be a lesson for them. Out of over 460 members constituting red and green chamber, only about 146 returned, reflecting a turnover over 70, about 70% did not come back. That is a turnover. Now, that is the voice of Nigerians speaking, taking out about 70% of those members and telling them you did not perform, you did not represent us. So the new guys should be very happy and excited, but I think you should also look at the cup as half empty and go in there with the intention to deliver the dividends of democracy to the people that have spoken in a way and manner that gives an appraisal. Because that's an appraisal, that's a referendum of the National Assembly, on the 9th Assembly, that 70% of them did not return. So I expect that to guide their thinking and their activities in the proceedings of Parliament to ensure that they play their role in a way and manner that in the next, from today to the next 4 years counting down, day in, day out, we see value, on the mandate we give them, we see value on taxpayers' money and the revenue we generate in this country to support that Parliament. That is what I expect to see from the 10th Assembly.
Right. Earlier you mentioned creative tension. I would like for you to expatiate on that as we begin to talk about how they should hit the ground running.
Creative tension means to put Nigeria first, okay? Within the ruling party and across the opposition party. The opposition party have their roles. But indeed, women within the ruling party, while debating, to look at, first of all, Nigeria, and also to look at the constituents that they represent over and above personal and parochial interest. And if that is true, even within the ruling parties, sometimes we'll expect to see creative tension. Veronica and Kemi, people are representing different nationalities. And it will be hypocritical to say all is well in Nigeria with regards to members of parliament today. They represent people that are angry. They represent people that have high expectations. They also represent people that have some perceptions that we need to correct with regards to how, they see themselves in Nigeria or how things are put. So these are things that are germane and that should be addressed. So I don't expect every day for us to come and have a conversation that is around what has generated the mantra of rubber stamp National Assembly. And that is why I call it creative tension. Creative tension is for us to agree to disagree, and then to disagree to agree. At the end of the day, keeping our focal point on the critical issues of nation building. We don't have to tear our clothes or throw tables at each other. But indeed, if we raise our voices and have any argument, no matter how high the tension is, it should be creative so that the outcome is for the betterment of Nigeria and that there will be mutual respect for parliaments, knowing that they are representing Nigerians and the way and manner they conduct themselves there is going to reflect how we as Nigerians from different geopolitical zones, states, ethnicities, and enclaves also represent ourselves. So that is what I mean by creative tension. Even members of the same team could have disagreements with regards to policy, lawmaking, oversight, but they should do it with Nigeria in their mind. And definitely sometimes we may agree, but then again, sometimes we disagree to agree.
Right. You are here to address the matter of how they should hit the ground running.
Well, to hit the ground running, first of all, is to look at the cardinal responsibilities of the National Assembly. And due to lack of time, I will address the three critical ones. One is lawmaking, second is oversight, and the third one is constituency, responsibility. The Ninth Assembly, passed a cumulative number of over 1,000 bills out of a cumulative of about 3,000 bills that you proposed, which is not too bad. But we want to see improvement with regards to the lawmaking in terms of the quality of bills presented on the floor. Some of the bills that are presented on the floor and go through the process leave much to be desired. In my opinion, I expect, and I believe a lot of Nigerians expect to see intelligent lawmaking with a view to streamlining our policies in a way and manner that we get value. I want to see what I call policy coherence emanating from bills that should be proposed, argued, debated, and presented in a way and manner that at the end of the day, we don't have laws that are conflicting each other, and are counterproductive to the delivery of good governance. People should do enough research on the parliamentarians with a view to making laws that would be improvements or that will be in synergy at the end of the day to deliver the dividends of democracy. And where they shouldn't be in synergy, they should provide the required counterbalance to ensure that things work well. With regards to oversight, two critical legs of oversight. The first one is the issue of providing oversight to the MDAs to ensure they deliver in terms of budget performance, in terms of integrity of their process, and in terms of outcomes. So far, that leaves much to be desired in that we want to see the 10th Assembly scaling up performance with that regard, moving on from sensationalism oversight, moving on from transactional oversight to performance-driven oversight, to see them putting these MDAs on their toes in terms of budget performance and in terms of doing their job. We want to see that, and I hope and pray the leaders of the Green and Red Chamber will have a vibrant committee, chairman and members that will deliver, and they should also have a mechanism as leaders of the Green and Red Chamber to track performance of their committees to ensure they do the needful with regards to oversight. The second leg of oversight is with regards to the provision of the 1999 Constitution, Section 88 and 89, that gives the National Assembly the power of investigation with a view to improving our laws and checking excesses and corruption, and wastages to support the executive. Of course, they are not going to constitute themselves, with prosecutorial powers. But those provisions were made deliberately by crafters of the Constitution to ensure that they provide that counterbalance to check wastages, not for a National Assembly to be reactive. You come on the floor and you bring the media and you'll be showing us how things were done in a way and manner they shouldn't be done. How were you proactive in your parliamentary functions to even ensure those things that don't happen? And if they happen, what did you do to ensure, engage executive to ensure that those things don't happen moving forward? Then the issue of constitutional representation, which I think is a fallout we have seen with the 70% that didn't return. People will come to the National Assembly and forget their home address in the villages, in the constituents. The only time they remember the people is when they want to get elected. Now we have seen the people are very aware and conscious. More than any other time in the history of Nigeria, the political awareness is very high. And therefore, we expect that the parliamentarians will be in touch with their constituents, even with regard to the bill they bring to the floor. We don't see robust engagement with citizens or constituents. People will come to the floor and say they are representing their people, but we hear people saying we were not aware that they are bringing those matters to the floor. So we expect continuous engagement with the constituent that voted for them to come there with Nigerians. We want the National Assembly to listen to us, to look at our body language and align with it with a view to giving us the best of the 10th Assembly. Importantly, we want to see also the National Assembly supporting the hue and cry with regards to cutting down the cost of governance. They are emerging at a very critical time in the history of Nigeria where we need to show respect to Nigerians and stop insulting the sensitivity of Nigerians by scaling down the cost of governance. The president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has taken the lead and has indicated in his renewed hope agenda that this is an issue he's going to deal with. We expect the National Assembly across party lines to support this because it's impacting the socio-economic well-being of Nigerians.
Mr. Yusuf, let's also, spend some minutes now to talk about, I actually wanted you to fleshen up your earlier point on committee formations, because if you assess how engaging past committees have been in their roles that include summoning chief executive officers of MDAs and how far that had gone, and, now moving forward, the mandate being put square pegs in, square holes in terms of who heads what committees. And of course, there will be the juicy ones and there will be the usual scrambling for, I want this, I want that. So tell us more about that. And of course, there's also the critical duty that the lawmakers will also be preparing for, as we hear that names of ministerial nominees have been submitted to the DSS, ahead of them coming to be screened by the Senate.
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, the issue of committee formation is the prerogative of the leaders of the Green and the Red Chamber. So I will only urge Senate President Godswill AKPABIO, distinguished Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, to do the needful. They are experienced parliamentarians, they are experienced leaders by their own right. They know how to select their team. The team they select will be what will make their name to be written in gold or otherwise. History has shown that the committees have been underperforming, and like I said earlier, more transactional and sensational. So we expect to see robust delivery of oversight function from the committee angle. And that also, I will take it to the issue of budget. I pray and hope, and I wrote somewhere to Nigerians, that we look forward to the total elimination of orgy of corruption called budget party. If you recall, last year, the chairman of ICPC told Nigerians what we know, but maybe giving us details that in 2021 budget, over 300 billion was injected or inserted as budget padding, while in 2022, about over 100 billion. This issue of budget padding became more pronounced from 2016-17, during the 8th Assembly. We expect this National Assembly to demonstrate sense of responsibility and totally eliminate this issue of budget pattern. And the committees have critical roles to play with regards to appropriation, with regards to oversight. So we look forward, to those things being done by the committees in way and manner. Like I said, we expect to see a performance-driven National Assembly. Indeed, the leaders of the National Assembly are first amongst equals, but they have taken the mantle to lead the team. So we expect performance, not just from the front of moving motions on the floor and moving bills. We expect qualitative bills, we expect qualitative oversight function, and they need to take that constituency project money and deliver dividends of democracy to their people. I hope I won't see what we saw, very sad, a couple of goats and umbrellas being shared to constituents as constituency projects. We expect to see quality representation and engagement with the constituencies.
Yes, and what Nigerians should see or what Nigerians should expect when the ministers come on board for their rounds of screening.
Thank you very much. We expect to see sound engagement of these prospective leaders. They are going to play critical roles in the next 4 years. This issue, to my mind, in the 9th Assembly left most to be desired. It was more or less a joke. People will come, take a bow and go, throwing banters as if, we don't have issue, we don't have serious national development issue. So I look forward to see robust engagement of this, very respectable citizens of Nigeria that are going to hold critical portfolios to support this government. We expect to see seriousness on the floor when they are engaging. We expect to see data-driven and logic-driven engagement with regards to how they engage this prospective ministerial positions. But over and above that, also moving forward, any other nominee that will be sent to them, we expect very sound process to ensure that the best hands or the best people are selected to be able to deliver, moving forward. That is what I expect from the National Assembly.
Right.
And then importantly, sorry, one last word.
Okay.
It is very dear. The issue of restructuring, the issue of devolution of powers, the issue of true federalism, which Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Mr. President, also promised to deliver, which will also address the issue of national cohesion and national unity. Yeah. And it involves a lot of constitutional review.
Quickly.
We expect national to support that in the interest of national unity, in the interest of progress of Nigeria.
Okay, in the next 1 minute, because we are running out of time, I would like for you to quickly address this matter of making sacrifice, because that is what the government has been talking about. With the policies that have been made, the president is asking or calling on Nigerians to make sacrifice, and Nigerians are saying the government has to lead from the front with this aspect of sacrifice making. And earlier you pointed to the fact of cutting cost of governance. What would you expect in the aspect of sacrifice to be made from this person talking about the 10th Assembly? What should it be? And if you are looking at cutting the cost of governance, what are you envisaging?
Yeah, earlier on, like I was saying, Veronica, I mentioned, like you rightly said, for the National Assembly to also take the lead with the issue of cutting the cost of governance. We had a lot of conversation over the years with regard to the humongous amount of money that the Nigerian Parliament, takes, which is one of the highest in the world, and the defense that they need to be properly paid. And somebody is arguing that the presidential system is expensive. Come on, do we have to, are we supposed to cut our code according to our cloth, or are we just supposed to cut our code because somebody's suit looks good on him? It is very important, like I said, for this parliament to show seriousness and respect for the citizens of Nigeria. Leadership from the top. The president made a promise. We are waiting to see how that will play out with regards to the cutting down, restructuring the government and scaling down the cost of government, adoption of the Orosanye report. And also, like I mentioned, the National Assembly has a critical role to play with regards to appropriation. They should not appropriate chunk of money for themselves and go and cut other, subheads of the budget. They should demonstrate to us by starting with themselves, leading by example in terms of capital project, in terms of recurrent expenditure.
All right. We'll have to leave the conversation here now. Strategist, policy analyst, group CEO, Global Investment and Trade Company, Baba Yusuf, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Kemi and Veronica.
Right.